How you doing? Welcome to another episode. This is the 32nd edition. We are a few flavors short of the Baskin Robbins number of episodes. I don't know what the Baskin Robbins number is. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, Amanda Webster came on the program to talk about mental health, the importance that it has in our day-to-day lives, leveling off anxiety levels, all this important shit that we kind of take for granted, nutrition. Very enlightening episode. Amanda's got an amazing story about how she overcame her own plights of depression and anxiety, and how it led her to be the person that she is today. She's a model, writer, life coach. You could find her on Instagram at No, it's not Amanda. It's Amanda Webster Health. And also her website is amandawebsterhealth.com. If you go to programs on her website, you'll learn about her happiness program. It's designed to help people find like high levels of happiness, and she works to be a coach for you. And it seems like it's something that'd be really useful and really constructive. It's something that I'm planning on signing up for myself, and she has a special going on right now, 75% off, which turns out to be $99. I'm gonna give it a shot. I hope you guys give it a shot too. If not, that's fine. Still listen. Remember, Tony Talks 8 on both Instagram and Twitter, and Tony Talks 8 podcast at gmail.com. And also, don't forget, we had the new Tony Talks website launched. It's tonytalks8podcast.com. That was being launched over Wix. Here comes the episode. Here comes the intro. I'll talk to you guys next time.
Brand new start of it in old New York.
You look at the news, it's just you put on one channel and then you put on another channel. It's like just division, just constantly trying to divide people. I feel like
that's why I don't have anything to do with it. It's kind of like I used to be really into professional wrestling, and I can look at wrestling and say this is a storyline with an angle. It has an arc. They're trying to get a certain emotion from me. Fine. I knew that, and ironically enough, Donald Trump used to be involved with WWE. I remember for a solid year that he took over, quote unquote, WWE.
He got Stone Cold stunned.
He did get Stone Cold stunned. I have that video on my bad day playlist, so whenever I'm just feeling kind of grumpy about politics and stuff, I can just watch Stone Cold Steve Austin stun our president. It makes me feel better. But I remember that. I remember watching that, and I remember. You can watch it and know that there's an arc. You know that the people have a certain motive behind it. You know that they have a certain angle behind it, a certain story that they're trying to narrate. But then you watch the news, and so many people think that this is just somebody walked out with a camera and shot what's going on and didn't put a spin on it. But there's always a spin. No matter what news station you're watching, there's always a spin. And it's interesting because I don't consider myself liberal or conservative. I'm more middle ground. And a lot of my liberal friends keep trying to defend news stations like CNN. And I said, but they literally used footage from a zombie movie when they were reporting the protests.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was, I don't remember the name of the movie because I've never seen it, but they got caught using fake footage numerous times to report on these things. And nobody does anything about that. Or when Fox reports, false things, nobody does anything about that. And I remember back when I was young, that was illegal. If the news would have reported, false things, they would have gotten heavily fined and or banned. I actually remember a couple of our news stations undergoing heavy fines and temporary bans and stuff from reporting for a while when I was younger. This wasn't a thing. And I think that's the bigger problem here. The bigger problem is the way the news is trying to sensationalize this. Is there racism? Absolutely, there is, and it's tragic, and I would speak up against it any chance I get. Again, not going to go burn and pillage like the villagers on Shrek to get my point across, but I do understand people's frustration in this. I do understand people desperately wanting to change, but let's look and see what actually needs to be changed. Let's look at the real issues and the real things going on. Let's look at the real examples of racism that are still very much a problem, and stop trying to say that all cops are evil, all cops are out to just kill Black people, because now created another systematic,
Yeah.
almost another race. I don't want to say racism because cops aren't a race, but now you've created violence and fear around these individuals, and now you're putting their lives at risk. And that's not what anybody wants either. By making everyone afraid of the police, now you're perpetuating more violence, more fear, more negativity, instead of saying, hey, this incident was wrong, this incident was very wrong, but that's not saying that this is systematically, perpetuated throughout every city, every police precinct, every American.
I think part of it is that it's like an impossible job to be qualified for.
Oh
Like, because
yeah.
people lie to you. Well, I lie to cops if I get pulled
Oh,
over,
absolutely.
and you don't know, they don't know what they're walking into, and you're just constantly facing all types of characters that you could be getting called for a domestic thing, you could be called for nothing. People just call for no reason. People call if it's serious, and it's an impossibly qualified job. Plus, there's bad apples.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Every
There's
job.
there's there's definitely dirty cops, don't get me wrong, and there's definitely racist cops. And personally, just from what I saw and a little bit I did research, the guy in question did seem like a raging racist. I'm never gonna try to deny that. This guy looked and
Oh
seemed
yeah.
like a complete raging racist. So there is a good possibility, that in this situation it was racially motivated, but at the same time, if an African American cop did the same thing against a Caucasian cop, nobody's going to say, "Oh, well, he just killed him because he's a white guy." There seems to kind of now there's this new narrative that you can't be racist against a white person when the actual definition of racism is treating someone
It's
differently because
just
of the color of their
not. Yeah.
skin.
It's all that. I mean, racism is racism.
Yeah.
I mean, it works. It works in all races, shapes, and sizes, and everything.
I
Ironically.
apologize, by the way, to anyone that I might offend today because I have kept my mouth very shut about this whole situation. So I haven't said anything. So all of the thoughts and feelings that I'm having deep inside might come out. And I'm really not trying to offend anyone or minimize the
I think
plight of any individuals.
I think
So,
we gotta understand like where people come from too. You got to be able to, if you have something that somebody just doesn't agree with, it doesn't mean you're a certain way. It just means that we have
right.
to. I think big thing I say is the world would be a lot better place if we all just had respect. If you're able to just respect others' viewpoints, you might not. They might. Nobody sees the world through the lens of anybody else besides themselves.
Of course.
So you can only speak to the lens you speak. That not that you speak. You can only speak through the lenses. You see through the lenses. Um,
I understood what you were saying.
so I mean, just and that goes for anything. That you do that internationally. If people have different religions than you, everybody has their own plight that they're facing inside their own heads. So, and you know
I
that
have,
more than anybody. That's why. That's
oh
how
yeah.
I was able to find you, and we were able to set this up. So,
I have this curse that I can usually see both sides of an argument or of a story, and I can pick out the the validity in both sides of a lot of major issues, most major issues. Notice I say most. There are some that you just go, oh my God, the opposition is batch crazy. How do they have this viewpoint? But for the most part, like I really can look at other religions and see the value in their religions, even though I don't have any specific faith. I can look in the value of most movements and say, wow, I really see why this message is important, or I really agree with these tenets of this message, but the way you're going about it is insane. Like PETA is a really good example for that. I am a big animal advocate. I'm vegan. I would do anything to save, a dog or an animal, and I'm raising my son the same way. But I don't agree with the tactics of that specific organization. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, you don't care about animals because you're not a PETA supporter." I said, "No, I do care about animals. I just don't agree with radical behavior because nobody is going to see somebody holding a funeral in a supermarket and say, man, I
oh
should
my
go
God,
eat chicken now, like it's just not effective.
right.
It might be jarring, it might be, shock, but it's not an effective way of getting your message across. Just like a lot of the things going on now, pillaging isn't going to get your message across.
Right, and you're gonna give people more. Well, I mean, I do see both sides of it because a lot of people
Sure.
say a life was lost. How could you compare property to that? And it's like you're not doing that, but at the same time, there's people that have been killed through these uh,
Yeah, now you're just perpetuating more violence
I,
to more death.
and I feel like that a lot of the initial protesters, what they were protesting for, were genuine, but a lot of things have become radicalized through other
Yes,
influences that are
yes.
using this cause as an excuse or a reason to manipulate people to create more extremism or more violence. Or
But don't you find this a little ironic also that this just happened on election year, that we get wrapped up in another bit of fodder right before election year or right
listen,
before elections happen?
I'm all in on the conspiracies on everything that's been going on this year because this year's been crazy. Especially New York City passed a bail reform law. So in earlier in the end, like January, so there were people that were committing crimes, burglaries in particular, that were being released, like arrested and released, all this whole year. And now with a lot of the riots that happened in New York City in particular, they were arresting like 1,000 people in a day, but they have to release them all because of to save money and how bail reform law is.
Yeah,
So it's just the perfect. It just makes it just like lightning in a bottle for chaos there now.
yeah, and that worries me. It concerns me where this is going. Like, I want to prepare myself as best as possible, just like everybody else. I just don't want to buy into hysteria or really even conspiracy theories. I mean, we all have the things that we
I
think about
do.
while we're
I'm all in
chit-chatting
on
like
them. I'm
this.
just kidding.
I've never been one to really jump on conspiracy theories. I listen to them and I take them into consideration, but I've never been one to get completely passionate to, oh my god, it's a conspiracy. And if anyone ever again brings up the whole BS about Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington being part of a sex ring and they were murdered and it was framed as suicide, I will literally smack them in the face.
I
I
don't, I
will
don't,
literally just punch them in the teeth.
I don't know who. I don't know who that. I don't know that story.
So when Chester Bennington, the lead singer of Linkin Park, took his life back in 2017, in summer of 2017,
Okay.
on the birthday of Chris Cornell from Audioslave, I believe. I wasn't a Chris Cornell fan, so I believe it was Audioslave. But so everyone started saying, no, they didn't really commit suicide. It was murder because they had all this intel information on some sex trafficking rings or something. And I'm sitting there going, but they both had a history of mental health concerns. And it
Yeah,
was no
that's the
secret that
thing.
they were battling. You could watch the videos of Chester in the days before his death. And if you have a mental health illness yourself, you can look and say, that's a man struggling. That's a man in pain, faking happiness to try to get by. You could see that he'd already made his choice. Like, I could go back the videos and say, oh God, I can absolutely see it because I was there. I had that feeling and I know what it looks like in other people a lot of the time.
That's the thing. People, if there's a story that somebody does something just because they're of any type of like social significance, they create theories around something rather than just letting the issue speak for itself or letting the event speak for
Yeah.
itself.
And I think that minimizes, the struggles
Right.
that Chester and Chris went through, that minimizes the message that people are now trying to use to honor them about advocating for mental health and education and ending the stigma. Just having stupid conversations like this is doing nothing to end the
Mm-hmm.
stigma of mental health and bring awareness around that, and that really bothers me. I did a suicide walk a couple of years ago to raise awareness for mental health and for suicide awareness, and some guy started in on this whole theory and my fists clenched. My friend was literally holding my arm because I am just about to sock this guy right in the face. And he just goes up to him and is like, bro, you need to stop right now because she's about to lose it on you. And I'm not a violent person. I've never actually been in a fight. I have pulled a gun twice, but I've never been in a fight.
You've pulled a gun twice?
I have.
You haven't been in a fight, but that's probably why you haven't been in a fight because you pulled the gun.
Right? Nobody's going to jack with me. But both times were because I had female friends that were being very physically abused by partners. And the one time the friend came to me and had different
She,
bruises and markings on her. Clearly, he'd had rounds with her. And this is the first time she actually confessed it to me. And I was a teenager at the time. And I went to my mom. I said, I'm leaving. I'll be back. Watch this friend because she's struggling right now. I need to go take care of stuff. I'll be back. And I literally went and got my dad's gun, went and knocked on this guy's door, and he was a huge guy, like a 6-foot guy, shoved a gun in his face and said, if you ever effing touch my best friend again, I will kill you. They broke up after that, and he never touched her again.
Good.
And then
Good for you.
the other situation was similar. I was helping a friend get out of a domestic violence situation where the guy was being very abusive and she needed to get to a safe house. And we were at a relative's house of hers where she's supposed to be safe, but we were getting her affairs in order and stuff, getting her stuff in order. And the guy shows up there, and I happen to be outside getting into my car at the time. And he starts to, you know, move toward the house, and like I end up having confrontation with him, and he tries to get all threatening and aggressive with me, and I didn't even point it at him this time. I just pulled it out and I said, look, she might be afraid of you, but I'm not. And he left. So little 100-pound Amanda scared off the big bad wolves a couple times.
How tall are you?
5'5".
Okay.
Yeah, and both these guys were, the first one, he ended up being a bouncer. So, I mean, he was the big guy. The second one, well, he was kind of average. I mean, he wasn't scrawny or anything, but he was kind of an average build. But that was kind of my dad would have been proud. Actually, my dad was still alive during the first incident, and he was definitely proud of that one.
I mean, that's a nice argument for the Second Amendment.
But yeah, because I was raised in Missouri, and I don't want to say trained with firearms, but I learned safety of firearms. I learned how to shoot a gun at a very young age. I learned that you never pull a gun you're not like willing to use. You never pull a gun just in joking. You know, a gun is used as a defense mechanism, and that is it. And I've always been taught to have a very healthy relationship. I have 2 guns now, and well, I've had stalkers. I've had people break into my house trying to hurt me, and I will never be shamed for my decision to protect myself, because when you have something like mace or a knife, that means you have to get close to that person. And if there's somebody that's willing to break into my house to try to kill me, or God knows what they were trying to do, I don't want to have to get close to them. I don't want to have to get close enough to try and stab them or mace them or whatever. I just want them gone. Yeah,
it's more like in both those cases, it acted more as a deterrent anyway.
Yeah, that's what it really amounts to. I mean, very rarely would a person really need to use a firearm, but you know, having it, as you said, as that deterrent, it really gives me peace of mind at night when I have to wonder if who the hell is going to try and break in my house next.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a child to protect, and you know, my guns are in a hidden, safe area, locked up, that he wouldn't get to. But even so, he's 9, and he knows the same things I was taught. He knows he never goes into mommy's purse. He knows that he can never touch a gun or use it, you know, as a toy or point it for any fun reason. I mean, he knows and understands gun safety and has there's no, what's what I'm looking for, when you put the taboo on it, then it becomes more when, and I don't know why I can't think of the word, but it starts to become more desired, because
there's no like mystery about
there you go. Yeah, there's no mystery. Like, guns are just a thing, and just like knives, just like a hot stove, he knows not to touch them, not to mess with them. So I feel like there's more danger in telling kids, no, they're terrible and they're awful, because I'd rather, you know, teach my kid how to defend himself when he gets older. And he did do a little bit of martial arts for a while, and that's something I'd like to get into. But again, that requires that person getting very close to you, and you don't know what skills or weapons they have.
Right.
I don't want to be close to these people. I don't want my kid being close to these people. And I've heard there was an amazing story a few years ago about this. I don't remember how old the kid was, but he was younger than 12. And he got his parents' shotgun and fended off burglars that were wanting to hurt him and his little sister. Because I don't remember where the parents were, but yeah, he had ended up fending the house like a man. And I thought that was really awesome. Like, he knew how to handle it. He knew what to do. He didn't act crazy. He didn't, you know, approach them. He waited in the closet, and I thought that was a really amazing story. You know, it's things like that it's just about education and awareness, like anything else. I think that everything has 2 sides. Guns aren't the violence. Somebody is behind it pulling the trigger. A gun doesn't just walk out the front door and shoot somebody.
Right. It's like McDonald's didn't make me fat. It's like,
Right.
'cause I kept going there.
Well, there was an incident in, I want to say it was in Japan, where these guys went on a subway with samurai swords and started just slaughtering people on the subway. And I'm
What the
sitting there
fuck?
going, yeah, there's acid attacks in London, there's bombs and stuff. I mean, if a person's psycho enough to go try and kill people, they're gonna find a way to do it. Do I think that we need, AKs with tons of ammo? No, but I do very much. That's my one really right issue, where I
So
really
left.
go more right wing. Is I'm all for the right to bear arms. Like I will never feel guilty for my decision to own a firearm.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I'm like more libertarian, independent. There's issues that I'm left on. There's issues that I'm right on.
Same.
So I don't really have a home. So
Neither. You can be in my home.
yeah, just to start a third party here on Tony Talks.
I really wish that there was a stronger independent candidate, a stronger independent standing. And I've come to the conclusion that when elections come around, I think that there should be an option for none of the above. So
Absolutely.
if
Vote or no
more
comp.
people, yeah, if enough people, like if the majority of people have checked none of the above, then we should have to rehold for candidates. We should have to re-elect candidates, like new candidates.
This year is perfect for it because you got
Oh
Joe
my
Biden.
God.
I don't even know how you feel about. I'm just gonna take a gander.
The last time was terrifying to me because I'm sitting there. I don't know if you or your listeners are Harry Potter fans, but when it was
Sure, some are.
Hillary versus Trump, I'm sitting there going, oh my God, it's Voldemort versus Umbridge. That's literally what our presidential election has become, is Voldemort versus Umbridge. Because I'm not saying either of them are really.
I don't get the Harry Potter. But I'm not the one a
Okay.
Harry Potter person. So, but I can imagine, I guess.
Somebody will culture you. One of your listeners is going to email you a very detailed explanation of this, or some clips or something. Come on, guys, help me culture him.
And now this year, the biggest and part of it too, the left has made such an issue about. And I want to get to your story.
Of course, or we'll just argue politics.
We could just this is what happens. Is the left has made such a big issue about civil liberties and giving minorities more of a voice. And then the biggest candidates they had were Joe Biden, who's an old 78-year-old white male, Bernie Sanders, who's like the same, Mike Bloomberg.
Yeah. So, I mean, we did have an African-American president last round, but this is the best you can do this round. Like, none of your candidates have any.
I liked Tulsi Gabbard.
Variants. Yeah.
Choose
See,
one.
I voted Gary Johnson last time.
Okay,
I know I'll get a lot of flack for this, but I'm just not voting this time. I'm not voting. I can't justify voting for the less of two evils anymore. And I know that that's awful, but you are. But there's really, it's either I choose evil by not voting, or I choose evil by going into taking my time to go into a voting place and say, okay, well, I guess this person doesn't totally suck.
That's what it did. No, that's what I'm saying. Jesse Ventura, I used to follow. He used to go on CNN all the time, be like, "Why vote for the lesser of two evils? It still means you're choosing evil."
Yeah, I followed him back when he was wrestling. So. But at the same time,
I saw you had on your page. We have a similar childhood hero, a common childhood hero in Diamond Dallas Page.
Yes, I love Dallas so much. I got to train under him for the DDP yoga program, so I became a certified DDPY instructor, which was really awesome because I remember the first time he called me, I just wanted to take a class. Like I would take random yoga classes, and I idolized DDP as a kid. So I thought, next time in California, because I saw that they offered the classes in California, I said, next time I'm in California, maybe I'm going to see if he's available, because I didn't even know where he lived or anything. And I didn't know, that it was a big program. Mm-hmm. So I message them and I say, hey, I'm really interested in knowing, when Dallas will be teaching classes, blah, blah, blah. Dallas himself calls me later that day. And the craziest thing about it was I'm just sitting there and I look at my phone, it's an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it. I answer, I hear the voice, I immediately recognize it, and I'm like just trying so hard not to fangirl. And I felt like Mean Gene Okerlund
Yeah,
the
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 commentator.
guy that did the interviews for
Yeah.
anybody that doesn't follow wrestling, and his personality, Dallas's personality, really is his wrestling personality. That's not fabricated. That's not exaggerated. He will talk to you exactly like he's giving an interview for me and Gina Okerlund. May he rest in peace. And it was just so crazy. And we've kept in touch over the years through the program and on a personal level. As a matter of fact, I'm actually going to be interviewing him for my budding YouTube channel, because I've been doing interviews with different celebrities and stuff about mental health, physical health, and whatnot. I did Joe Cross from Got Sick and Nearly Dead. I'm about to post Billy Bob Thornton. We talked about mental health. He talked really candidly, actually, about his experience with panic attacks, the different things he does to manage his mental health. I talked with Abby Johnson. She wrote the best-selling book Unplanned. It became a
Sounds
big
familiar.
movie. Yeah, it became a big movie last year, which is really interesting because Abby is very, very right. She's conservative. She's very pro-life. That's her brand, like her movement, her personality. But then you have Billy Bob, who's more, the Hollywood bad boy, quote unquote, which he's not at all. He is just like sitting and talking to an uncle. He was a great guy. But then you have Joe Cross, who's this Australian juicing guy, who's promoting health and whatnot. And then I'm gonna have Dallas and probably Eric Bischoff on my channel,
Wow.
which is So it's just such a cool thing, and that's the point. Is I want to have a variety of people, a variety of opinions, a variety of different insights on mental health, because it's not a right or a left issue. And that's the struggle I'm
Hmm.
having in this environment now, is people are making these things political issues, and they're not. Mental health is not a political issue. Equality is not a political issue. These things are not political issues. We should all care about access to mental health, about ending the stigma of mental health, about ending racism. It's just really how you go about it. And the way I've chosen to do it is not only sharing my own story, but encouraging other influential people to open up and share theirs. I got Billy Bob Thornton to talk about some crazy stuff. Like, he was talking about his marriage, which he said with Angelina, which he said he'd never talk about again. He was talking about veganism, because he's vegan. That was our big topics. He was talking about how that affected him mentally and stuff, and physically.
Like
It's
it helped.
really,
It was beneficial.
yeah, it was super beneficial for him.
Okay, that's
It
interesting.
was super beneficial for me too, because I went vegetarian in 2005, but I just went fully vegan last year, and it just made so much positive change for me, mentally and physically, actually. But there's a healthy way of going about it, and there's an unhealthy way of going about it, and I know both sides, because when I went vegetarian back in 2005, I was that person who was like, oh, well, I can just eat chips all day because those are vegetarian, right? So I
Vegetarian.
eat chips and French fries, and I don't think I ever touched vegetables, really. It was just carbs and carbs and carbs and fat and carbs and processed crap, and oh, well, here's boxed macaroni, that's vegetarian, right? So when I went vegan, because of my background as a mind body wellness coach, my specialty was holistic nutrition, so I had a lot more of an insight of what was healthy and what wasn't. And this came shortly after my decision, shortly after my step down from the ledge in
Hmm.
Canada, when I almost took my life.
Right.
This came after that. My decision to go vegan came after that, where I'd already started shifting toward healthier eating again and cutting out things that weren't serving me physically or mentally. And that was huge. I mean, I had struggled with clinical depression for almost 2 decades. I've been diagnosed as having a serious mental illness. I almost took my life. I cycled through addiction and self-harm and blah, 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 blah. And I'm absolutely not saying that being vegan quote unquote, fixed me or saved me or anything, but it was a huge component. My diet was not diet, my nutrition regime, I hate the word diet, was a huge
What,
foundation.
what eating and just what you put into your body has to have an effect on a lot of things. And so
Oh,
has.
yeah, it absolutely does. And there's a few reasons for that. First and foremost being there is a very real mind-body connection, a physical mind-body connection that we don't think about. First and foremost, our brain is part of our body. I don't know if people realize that, but the brain's right here. It's in our head. It's part of our body. But there's also the vagus nerve, which starts at the base of the brain and goes down into the gut.
Yeah, I had a, I I had an issue with something, and then I went to therapy, and I got a whole education on the vagus nerve. Because it starts like in your head, right?
yeah, it starts at the base of the brain here, and then goes down into your gut, and it passes through several other organs as well. But you know, when you get that gut feeling, when you just have a gut feeling that something's
Mm-hmm.
kind of off, that's your vagus nerve being stimulated. So when you're eating a bunch of trash and you're not fueling your body,
Mm-hmm.
you're not treating your vagus nerve well, what happens is that sends signals to your brain saying something is wrong, something is wrong. And of course that's going to perpetuate symptoms of anxiety and depression. And I can attest for that firsthand, that when I was eating a lot of sugar, a lot of dairy, a lot of, you know, just heavily processed crap food, it absolutely affected me mentally. It absolutely made me feel 100% different than when I said, okay, I'm going to get back to the basics. And this was one of the things that I chose to do when I came down from the ledge. That was one of the big things that I chose to change, was my nutrition regime, because I knew from my education, my training, you know, as a mind body wellness coach in the holistic nutrition training, I knew the connection. I knew that if I wasn't giving my body the nutrients that it needed, that can affect your mental health. There's several nutrient deficiencies that can very much affect your mental health. If your thyroid's off, that can affect your mental health. There's a
Right.
lot of things that can affect mental health. If you're constantly stressed out and your cortisol levels are high and you end up frying your adrenals, that's going to affect your mental health, you know? So there's a lot of components to giving ourselves the best chance possible to be able to cope with stress and symptoms of anxiety and depression. Now, people will argue, well, there's no cure for mental health issues. There's no cure for depression. You can't fix depression. And my claim was never that I cured or fixed myself. I've never tried to say that. I said that I'm now at a point where I very rarely have symptoms of anxiety and depression. If you want to say that it's still there, okay, maybe it's lying dormant somewhere. But I'm like, if I can get through a global pandemic and people literally pretty much reacting the purge outside my freaking window, I think that I can manage my stress and depression levels during any other time of my life, because I have had a few deaths since this incident of people close to me, and actually my beloved dog that I'd had for 15 years. I lost her last fall, and I know a lot of people say that that's not the same, but to me, I still grieved her just like I grieved my parents, you know, just like I feel like there's this expectation on grief that people say, okay, well, you're allowed to grieve if your best friend dies or if your parents die. But if your dog dies, you kind of need to get over that. Or when Chester from Lincoln Park passed away, I grieved. I grieved hardcore. I lost my shit, and that was probably the catalyst, I think, to the breakdown that I ended up having. But I was told by a mental health professional, well, it's not appropriate for you to be grieving him because you never knew him.
Yeah,
And
but you don't know the impact this person had on
right.
my life.
And I sent this mental health professional, it took me a couple days to figure out a nice way to frame it. But I sent her an email just explaining, you know, you don't have the right to tell me who I can grieve. It is your job to tell me how to grieve, but you don't get to tell me who to grieve. And I can't control whether or not I have grief surrounding this person's death. It's just on you to tell me how to get through it in a healthy manner. And I wasn't. I was at that point. I wasn't doing anything bad, but when he first passed away, I felt like it was my security blanket being ripped out of my hands. I'd listened to his music since I was a teenager, through sexual assault, through losing both my parents, through unplanned pregnancies, through, you know, being emotionally abused in a really shitty, unhealthy relationship. Like, there were times where Chester's voice was really all I had. And I just,
That's very fair. You don't need to be a mental health professional to say
right?
anybody would grieve somebody that had bad voice. That's the only voice that's getting you through things. I would grieve. Who wouldn't?
Right? And I think it's so insane that we put this expectation on people of what they can grieve, how they can grieve, how long they should grieve, when it's such a personal process for everyone. Like with my grandparents, I was pretty young, and I was fairly close to my grandparents. I had a reasonably close connection to them. And when they passed away, it was okay. I cried about it. I got upset. I moved through it, you know, pretty quickly. But when my mom died, I mean, my dad died in 05, and then my mom died in 07. When my mom died in 07, my whole freaking world just fell apart. I mean, I couldn't function. I couldn't work. I ended up turning to drugs. I ended up getting back into smoking. I couldn't function. I was in a
Right.
terrible relationship that went toxic like real fast, and things just got really ugly. And I had no idea how to cope because like this was everything. She was everything. It was very unexpected, and everything that I knew or believed that would be there for me. Like she was only 60, which is pretty young by today's standards. So I was not in any way, shape, or form prepared. As a matter of fact, I was still living with her. So this was 2 years after my dad passed away. Actually, yesterday was the anniversary of her passing. It's been 13 years.
Sorry.
And I take it now, like now that I've healed and I've gotten through that, I take it as a time to honor them. So yesterday I did a lot of writing and stuff because my mom was always very supportive of me writing and saying, you need to do something with your writing. A few years ago on the anniversary of my dad's death, I found a homeless guy and took him out to dinner. But now I've gotten to a point where I can honor and I can do positive things when these anniversaries come around. But the first half of the years that I dealt with these anniversaries was just I'd fall apart and become completely and utterly useless to myself and just cry and engage in really destructive, harmful behavior. And when Chester passed, I think the problem, I don't think I know, the biggest problem with that is like I said, it was my security blanket. So all of the things that I hadn't really coped with, like losing my mom, losing my dad, I didn't ever really cope with them. I didn't ever really get closure or get any kind of resolve. I just pushed them back. I did whatever I could, be it addiction or self-harm or whatever. I did what I had to do to get through. And when he passed away, this last thing that I had to hold on to that brought me comfort that I thought would be there for me for, a long time suddenly wasn't. And it made me feel like, okay, well, he lost his battle and he was a person that I looked up to, to keep me sane and to keep me alive. And for some reason, I guess just that forced me to deal with all of this trauma that I'd been pushing off all at once. So his death, not only am I now grieving his death, but now all of this other grief that I hadn't resolved, I hadn't dealt with, just comes up all at once. So the sexual assault from when I was a teenager, both my parents, all of these things now suddenly were just hitting me all at once. And I had no idea how to cope.
It's crazy how your mind can compartmentalize things or how it works to, and then when something that's holding everything together goes away, it all hits you at once. It's hard to I don't know, it's hard to figure it out. That's probably why we can't measure certain things.
Yeah, and I had no idea that this was like what was holding me
Hmm.
together. I wouldn't have
But
known
it
at the
makes sense. It
time.
makes perfect
Yeah, it
sense.
makes perfect sense in retrospect, but I absolutely at the time wouldn't have thought that Chester
Right.
Bennington and Lincoln Park was what was keeping me, sane. I mean, I actually wrote a book that will be published here soon that I want to call One More Light. That
One more
it,
light.
yeah, One More Light, like the Lincoln Park song, that goes through not only the traumas that I enjoyed, but how specifically the music helped me through these dark times. So it's kind of a tribute to Chester, but it's also a memoir of my story and my struggles with mental health and with sexual assault and with grief and with loss, and how the music did inspire me and did help me deal with the grief and the symptoms of my mental health disorders that I had at the time.
Now you started a career in mental health at what point? Because you were diagnosed young.
Yeah, I was diagnosed. They changed my diagnosis like every time I changed doctors, they'd come up with
Okay.
something
Yeah.
else.
It's just
Yeah,
okay.
so I was initially just seeing therapists when I was younger because I was being bullied. So it was kind of a generalized anxiety or
Hmm.
general depression. Then they tried to diagnose me bipolar. That changed to manic depression, and the most recent, well, then it was generalized anxiety again. Then it was borderline personality disorder. That was my most recent diagnosis, was borderline personality disorder. And I'm not saying that none of the symptoms make sense because they did, especially at the time. But I don't really, I never really resonated with the labels. I mean, I did get some really valuable tools, skills when I was going through DBT therapy for borderline personality disorder. But I just don't think that the label really ever made a difference. It didn't change anything about how they treated me,
You
like
felt
what
the
they
same.
did.
You
I
felt the
felt the
same,
same.
but the
They
label was
treated me,
changing.
yeah, they
And they were
treated me the
treating you
same.
differently. Were they treating
Actually,
you?
they were treating me the same. They changed my medication because
Okay.
I was guinea pigged on medications for a long time until finally I just refused to keep trying because they're giving me such terrible side effects that I'd try a medication and I'd hallucinate or I'd think I was dying. I'd have horrible panic attacks. I'd get worse than suicidal ideation. And so they'd switch me to another medication, which had the same effects. I mean, the best one I ever had, I think it's Paxil. It didn't get rid of the feelings in my head. Like I still had the pain, I still had the sadness, I still had that just complete desolation in my head, but I couldn't outwardly express it. So it wasn't even that I was numb, it was that I still had all of this pain in my head stuck inside of
It
me.
doesn't do
And I
much
had,
for you.
yeah, but I had no way to get
Right.
any of it out. I couldn't cry. That was terrifying. That was almost scarier than the depression itself. And so they did this for, oh God, like well over a decade.
Did you ever try Zoloft?
Yes, I tried Zoloft, and they put me on even child's doses of this stuff, of these different medications, and it still just had the same effects. I don't know if I am just one of those freak people that have some kind of gene that makes it
I don't know.
where I can't take medication, because I've known people that medication just either doesn't work to them or has adverse side effects. For example, I know a person who any kind of cane, like lidocaine, any of those, benzocaine, doesn't work. So if he goes to the dentist, they have to knock him out because they can't numb him. Like the numbing agents don't work on him, so they have to knock him out to do any kind of dental work.
I would prefer
So
that.
I don't know. Yeah, right.
I'm
I
sorry.
hate the dentist, but I don't know if I just had some kind of freak gene, but I couldn't take medication. It did not work for me, and it made me sad because it wasn't that I was opposed to medication. If I could just take a happy pill and make all
It's like
that
you
shit
just
go
want to be
away,
better. You just want to do
I
what you can to
do.
get better.
Yeah, and I wasn't ever opposed. Like I consistently saw therapists. I went to the groups they recommended to me. I read the books, that people would tell me. I go do the yoga classes. I read more Wayne Dyer than any one person should. Like I put in the effort. I really did. I put in the energy. I didn't argue people. I didn't argue my therapist when she said try this medication until after years and years of coping with the side effects of the medication, which were worse than the depression itself, I said, fuck this, I can't do this anymore. And I told my mental health professional, I can't do this. And everyone I've seen since then, I said, I will not take medication. You can recommend anything else in the world to me. I will not take medication. And I want to share something. I actually haven't shared this with anybody else, so you guys will be the first to get to hear this. So as a lot of my people know, I was decertified. I'm in the process of being decertified as having a serious mental illness. And part of that decertification process involved them doing a new screening. So in November 29th of 2018, which was a little over a month after the incident in Canada where I almost took my life, I was rated on their scale as having anxiety at a 16 and depression at a 20. Now, I actually don't know what the field goes to, but so my depression was a 20, my anxiety was a 16. As of about a week ago now, it was May 29th, 2020, my anxiety was a 2 and my depression was a 3. And this was done by a mental health professional who evaluated me and did the screening on me. And her exact words were, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Why on earth did you ever have an SMI, or were you ever considered SMI? And you've made so much progress, there's no way you're SMI. So this was
SMI.
mental health professional, serious mental illness.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So I've had it confirmed by mental health professionals that I just no longer exhibit the symptoms of having a serious mental illness. I no longer exhibit the symptoms necessary to be considered SMI. I still have a little bit of anxiety. I think I'll always just be a little more heightened emotionally.
I think everybody has that on a spectrum, kind of.
Yeah, that is the biggest thing that I talk about in the program that I pre-launched last week, called Happiness Boost. Is happiness and depression likewise happen to people on a spectrum. So everyone's happiness happens on a spectrum. You're not going to experience happiness in the same way I experience happiness. So what a lot of people do is they'll say, well, I'm not happy because I don't experience happiness like like Amanda does. And I am that person that when I'm happy, it freaking consumes me. Like my face lights up and I'm very animated. I get very giddy. I might cry. But it really consumes me and I get very happy. But my best friend just isn't like that. Even when she, was in a very healthy place mentally, she just was not like that. She's never been like that. And that's okay. And even if someone is struggling with a mental health condition, there's definitely a way that they can move higher on their own personal happiness spectrum. So maybe they'll get rid of their symptoms, maybe they'll just lessen their symptoms, maybe, somewhere in the middle. But the point is if you're doing everything possible with your nutrition regime, with your body, with your lifestyle, your habits, if you're doing everything possible to move yourself higher on the happiness spectrum, that's where we start finding healing. I mean, there is something to be said about medication. It works for a lot of people. I don't discourage people from taking medication if that works for them. My program can definitely be done in conjunction with people that take medication, but the point isn't never having another symptom ever again. That's insane to think that you're never actually, you'd be a sociopath if you never had emotions.
Right, yeah.
So that would be a whole nother problem. So it isn't getting rid of emotions. It's not getting rid of sadness. I had a panic attack a couple weeks ago. It was the first one I'd had in a long time, but I mean, the whole freaking world's going nuts and there's a global pandemic going on outside my window. So I think that I'm justified in, yeah, my panic attack was a little warranted. And really at the end of the day, they're always warranted. Like there's not a time that a panic attack really isn't warranted. If your body is needing to go through that time, the best thing you can do is find ways to cope with it. And there was a long time where I had just found ways of coping with anxiety and panic until I started lessening it. And I had a lot of different methods for that, but until I started lessening the occurrence of it, the best thing I could do was really just learn to cope with it as it came in a healthy manner.
How often would they occur
back when I was in my darkness, pretty much daily. I would have panic attacks. I would have severe panic attacks at least a few times a week, but I'd have anxiety attacks almost every day.
What's the difference?
So don't quote me on this because this is my personal definition. This is how I define the difference.
Listen, we'll quote you. We'll give you credit, and then it'll be the next big thing.
Right. Well, for me, a panic attack is when you feel dissociated. You feel extremely dissociated. I might think that I'm dying. I think that I'm dreaming. I'm not in reality. And I just have this overwhelming fear. That's all I know. That's all my body feels is fear. And I'm convinced that something is just wrong. And it's kind of like being outside of yourself and slightly to the left. It just feels off. It's like you feel a glitch in the matrix, I guess is the best way to describe it. You feel like something's shifted and you just feel wrong. And your whole body starts reacting to that as if it's fact. Your whole body starts reacting as if, oh God, I'm dying, or I'm dead, or I'm dreaming, or I can't wake up, But when I have an anxiety attack, it's just when I start to get stressed, I start to get the beginning symptoms of it where I start to get kind of shaky.
Heart racing.
The heart racing, the ruminating thoughts. But with an anxiety attack, it's not as intense. With an anxiety attack, it's more just, okay, my thoughts are starting to get out of control and I need to put a stop on them. And an anxiety attack can turn into a panic attack. But for me, an anxiety attack is kind of the precursor to a full-blown panic attack. An anxiety attack is where you just start getting the beginning symptoms and you're just starting to notice your thoughts ruminate. You're just starting to notice that stress.
So the anxiety attack, you can diffuse before it becomes a panic attack.
Yes, with a panic attack, at least for me, I don't know.
This is
Amanda. This is me, and a lot of the clients I've worked with have kind of shared the same sentiments on this. So, but for me, when I have a panic attack, there's no way that I'm going to come out of it any sooner than like 10 minutes. I can talk myself down to the end of days. I can get through it faster, but a panic attack will always last me at least about 10 minutes. And I just have to say, okay, like this is going on now, and I've been here before, and I'm going to get through this, and I know that I'm safe. I actually made a recording for myself when I was in my right state of mind, when I wasn't having a panic attack, that was really just positive, self-talk saying, you've been here before, you've gotten through this, you'll get through this, you're not dreaming, you're not crazy, you're not dying, you've experienced this before. So then I made a video on that YouTube channel. I was talking about my new little YouTube channel. I posted a video that was kind of the same thing, that was just affirmations through panic and anxiety to comfort someone who's having, an attack. That was just what I used when I was in that state of mind. That it's scary, it's terrifying when you think you're dying. And for me, when I took the medications, almost always, like every single time, I would end up having really bad panic attacks within the first 24 hours of taking a new medication, regardless of the dose. And then I'm convinced, oh God, my body is having a bad reaction to the medication.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah. And you're sitting there going, oh God, like I'm dying because of this medication.
Every time I get a needle or a shot, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I'm the same way. And I'm just, my brain is absolutely convinced that
So
this medication
crazy.
has killed me, or I'm going to be crazy forever. Because, when you're started on a new medication, you have no idea what to expect. You have no idea what the side effects could be. You have no idea whether or not, I mean, it could kill you. Any medication, technically speaking, could kill you if you had an allergy to it. So I'm just sitting there and my mind just goes completely out of control. And I never managed to find a way to get through that. I mean, after a decade, I never found a way to manage to get through the anxiety and panic attacks that came with medication.
And this was pre-2008.
Oh, the 2018.
I mean,
yeah.
not, I mean 2018. Sorry.
Yes, I stopped taking medications. Yeah, prior to that, although it wasn't my first. It wasn't the first time I'd been to the point of suicide, for sure, and it wasn't the first time that I spiraled completely out of control. So it's not that. As a matter of fact, I hadn't regularly taken medications since my 20s, since my early 20s. Probably my mid 20s. I had tried a couple times more to take very low doses, and it still just did the same thing, and I said nope. So the last time I had tried one was probably 4 years ago now. I tried, and I don't even remember what it was anymore, but it was awful. And I was so mad because I told the mental health professional over and over and over, I don't want medication, I don't want medication. And she said, there's just no one on the market, and you're really struggling. And I was really having a hard time. She said, you're really struggling, and I just want to see if child's dose will do anything. Done child's doses before, I knew better, but I really was desperate, and I was in a dark place, and I let her talk me into it, and I cussed her out the next appointment we had. I literally just went in and threw the bottle at the ground and just cussed her out. And I am not that type of person. I do not cuss out, professionals or telemarketers, even anything, but I was just pissed. I said, I told you that this would happen. Well, you just need to get, and I cut her off. She started to say, because I've literally heard this from a
You need to
dozen
let it
therapists.
get in your system for
You
so
just
long.
need to give it some time. And I looked her in the eyes and said, fuck you, lady. She was the one that I had to fight to get them to reassess me for SMI, because when I came back from Canada, which is where the ledge incident took place, where I almost jumped, I almost took my life.
Let's talk about, let's just
Okay, sure.
go through that, because we keep referring to it, and I think so
we'll get back to what I was just talking about, because I can end with that.
So you were at a hotel.
So I was at a hotel in Canada, in Quebec, Canada, and everything had just compiled on me. This was about a little over a year after Chester had died. And like I said, I absolutely lost my mind, because now I'm having to deal with all of this grief that I hadn't resolved. Everything was compacted on me. I kept having really intense life situations happen to me. I got sued twice. I got sued by a dog client because I was doing dog boarding. I got wrongfully accused of a DUI. I was taken to court over that. I was in a car accident, and Chester died, all in a 2-week span. This was literally all in a 2-week span. All this stuff happens. And then I realized in the weeks following, when I'm starting to feel like all of these things coming up, and that I hadn't resolved any of this grief. So I spiraled into drugs. I spiraled back into self-harm. I didn't know what to do. I just completely lost control. And so this is about a little over a year after his passing. And I had stopped drugs and stuff a couple months prior when I met the surviving singer of the band, Mike Shinoda. I had stopped drugs, I stopped the self-harm, and everybody, like the couple people that I told about this, my couple close friends, they said, well, that's great, I think that you're really gonna start healing now. But the problem with that was I didn't have any healthy coping mechanisms. So at this point, it's like, okay, well, I don't have Chester, I don't have the drugs. I don't have the self-harm because I committed that I was going to stop. And I just, in my mind, didn't have that, didn't have my parents. My friends were a million miles away. I felt like I had nothing and I felt hopeless and I just felt so dark and so done and so just completely and utterly desolate. I've been to the point before of feeling suicidal, but there was always that fear that stopped me. There's always that fear of, oh God, what if there's nothing else? I don't want to die. Or, you know, when I was religious, what if God judges me? And I didn't have that fear anymore. And the only fear I had was that it was going to hurt. And I said, I don't want to hurt anymore. And I remember looking down at the roof below and just thinking, I don't want to hurt anymore. I hope this doesn't hurt. And I remember thinking of my son, because as much as everyone says that suicide is a selfish decision, it's not, because the last thing I was thinking about right before I jumped was, I'm doing this for him because he doesn't deserve to have me as a mother. He deserves better than me. Like, he doesn't deserve to have to deal with my crazy. And I really genuinely thought in that moment that I was doing what was best for him. And I think that was a powerful revelation in the time afterward, that we think about these people. We do think about all the people that we're leaving behind, but we think about them through this distorted lens of what our brain is telling us, what the depression is telling us, what the pain is telling us. We're seeing these people through a lens of, they're better off without me. I'm a burden on them. They're not going to miss me. They're going to get through it just fine. This is what my brain was feeding me. Even my best friend, my brain was saying, you've never been anything but a burden on your best friend. She's going to be better off without you. You know, so the only thing that ended up bringing me down was, ironically enough, well, it's not irony. I don't know that I necessarily believe in a higher power or anything, but whether you want to say God, universe, whatever, fate, whatever, a Linkin Park song turned on. Yeah, whatever your thing
spirit
is.
That connects to you, whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever that word is for you. A Linkin Park song came on right in that very moment, outside my door, in that Canadian hotel room, in a fucking French, pardon my French, literally, French speaking, je suis désolée pour cette erreur, but like right outside my door, this song comes on, and I initially stepped down because I was in shock. I thought, I'm going crazy. Like, this is my life flashing before me. I'm just going insane. And I got down and walked over there just to see if it was real. And there's two guys with their little cleaning cart, and they just give me this really bizarre look because I probably look completely disheveled and insane. And they're either thinking she's crazy or, oh God, she's gonna ask for towels and we don't want to deal with this. But they just give me this really weird look, and I had a brief interaction with them in French and went back inside my room and just completely and utterly fell apart. And that was what I needed. I broke down to my absolute very core on the floor of that hotel room by myself, a million miles away from home. And I just fell apart. And as many times as I cried and I grieved and I really,
That could be healthy.
I'd felt, you know, I never got that raw, and I never got down to the core that much. And I couldn't tell you what the difference was, but I just felt this like weight lifted off of me. And I started having all of these crazy revelations, all of these crazy just realizations about life and about, I'm going to say the word faith, and if you take that religiously, fine, but for me it was a lot less about religion and a lot more about just understanding the universe, like the energetics of the universe, the way things work. And I was just bestowed with this comfort that I'd never experienced before. And some might say that was just an awakening, some might say that was an angel or God, or again, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter to me. But I just had this crazy moment where everything became crystal clear to me. And so what I was saying before I shared the story was, so I go back home like the next day, which, by the way, my Uber driver didn't show up the next morning. So I had no way of getting to the airport. And that just caused a whole, meltdown. And I call my partner and my best friend, and I'm just hysterical at this point because I'm like, look, I didn't tell my friend, but I told my partner, I said, look, I just almost jumped out of the window ledge. Like, I just almost killed myself yesterday, and I'm about to lose my shit. I don't know what to do. Get me to the fucking airport. Like, I need to get to the airport. I need to get home. And that was all I wanted, was just get home. Eventually I did. I got home and I went to my mental health professional and I explained, this is what happened, but I am committed to getting better. I am committed not only to our clinical goal, which was reducing the symptoms of depression, like reducing incidents, reducing mental health like crises, reducing the risks and stuff. But I'm gonna be happy. I said, this isn't just I'm going to not want to kill myself. I'm going to be happy. And that woman, who by the way was a different person than the one who told me I didn't deserve to grieve Chester, this woman straight out said, well, I don't really think that's possible. Like, straight out told me that I would never be happy, that I would never be anything more than safe, I guess. That I would just be at a point where I could manage my symptoms, but I would never find any genuine happiness or any genuine fulfillment. And that was your guys, you probably won't get this reference, but that was my Elle Woods in a bunny costume when Warner told her she wasn't smart enough for law school and Legally Blonde moment, where I was just like, screw
every Tony
you.
Talk's favorite.
Just like, screw you, you freaking watch me. And that, for a lot of the big successes that I've had in my life, being told that I can't do something has been my catalyst many times to prove them wrong. And I can say now, a year and a half later, over a year and a half later, that I absolutely am happy and I don't have the symptoms of this mental health disorder. And when I stopped having the symptoms, when I realized that I didn't symptoms anymore, I asked this mental health professional, I said, I want to be reevaluated. And she said, no, like, nobody gets decertified as having a serious mental illness. It's not a thing. I said, I want to be reevaluated. Perhaps I stuttered. Let me be clear. I want to be reevaluated. So after fighting and taking it over her head and really just standing up for myself and saying, you know, I have the right to be reevaluated. And eventually she very reluctantly did. And the most gratifying thing probably in my life was hearing that woman have to say I was wrong. And you're right, you no longer exhibit the symptoms of having an SMI, a serious mental illness. And we're gonna start the decertification process, which does require a lot of assessments, a lot of screenings and stuff to really make sure. So it's a very thorough process, but every single person that I've had to interact with during this time, I mean, every single one of them will say, there's no way you're SMI. There's absolutely no way you're happier than most people I know. You're healthy. Like, you don't have any addictions. You don't have any traits of self-harm. You have a functional life. You achieve your goals. Like, you set and achieve goals. You have, you know, a successful business. You take good care of your son. You have these hobbies that you're interested in. You have.
Well, how did it start to shift for you to become happy and after that experience? What was it? Was it just nutrition?
Well, it was a
Do
lot
you
of
have
changes.
Do you have a heart out right now?
Do I have what?
A heart out?
I actually do. My the program that I was talking about that I just did pre-enrollment for, Happiness Boost, is actually literally the steps that I took to get from absolute rock bottom to being happy. And
That's
like I said,
it's a coincidental segue.
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to self-promote, absolutely not. But
No, that's perfect. Of
I
course it was.
but it does, because I felt like with my clients, I was just starting to be very repetitive, and I'd have to repeat myself all the time about, you know, here's what you need to do. And it was just so foundational. And they were seeing great results. Like, my clients were seeing absolutely phenomenal results with going through the steps that I went through, albeit with nutrition, fitness, and the lifestyle changes and stuff. But for me, it was just starting to get very repetitive of having to walk person after person after person through the same thing, that I finally was like, you know what, I'm just going to make this into a course, because I can't keep repeating myself 26 times, you know, a week all the time. It was so overwhelming that, I turned it into a course. So there's 6 different modules that walk through not only where I was and, you know, explaining my situation, my backstory, the program and everything, assessing where a person's at and seeing, where they're doing good, where they can use improvement, and then going through, the nutrition, the fitness, the lifestyle changes, what you need to eliminate from your life, what you need to add to your life, and those sorts of things, because it's really important. What the biggest problem for me is I thought that I'd tried everything. When I was at that edge, obviously, I thought I'd tried everything, and I was feeling hopeless, and I was there because none of it was freaking working. But the problem is I'd say, okay, I'm gonna go do yoga for 2 weeks. I'm gonna go do yoga every single day for 2 weeks. But that didn't work. That didn't fix anything. So now I'm gonna read the self-help book, and I'm really gonna commit to whatever the self-help book suggests. Well, that didn't do anything. So I'd switch to something else, and I'd kind of jump between all of these different things, expecting something to quote unquote fix me, when the problem was really I just wasn't giving my body the opportunity to heal itself. I wasn't giving my body what it needed to function at its optimal level. So of course I was having symptoms of anxiety and depression, and yes, I am more susceptible because of family history and because of my genetics and stuff to having anxiety and depression issues. But just like I tell people that say, well, I have a family history of diabetes, so I'm gonna get diabetes, and I will say to them, you might, but all genetics does is load the gun. It's you that has the decision whether or not you're gonna pull the trigger.
Yeah, just don't have, I mean, how are you going to get it if you don't have that much sugar?
Right. Well, there are two types of diabetes, and there are some people their body just doesn't produce, insulin and whatnot.
That's true. I'm not an expert. I'm just...
No, so there are people that legitimately they can manage their symptoms of diabetes through their diet, through their nutrition regime. But there are times when it isn't quite that simple, but that the symptoms can still be managed one way or another. So regardless of if you do have type 1 diabetes, which is the autoimmune disorder where the body just destroys the cells in the pancreas, irregardless, you can still manage your symptoms through your lifestyle and your nutrition. Absolutely. But my point in that is yes, I can be more susceptible to it, but I was making style choices that were exacerbating these symptoms. And there are people that have extreme severe mental health issues that it's going to be a challenge for them to really come out of that and have a functioning life, if possible. Though there are people absolutely that have multiple personality disorders, schizophrenia, stuff like that. But mild and moderate depression and anxiety can almost always be treated with natural measures, almost always. Just like most cancers can be prevented and treated with natural remedies. Most diabetes cases can be treated with lifestyle and nutrition changes.
That's it's very interesting because I had, I'm relating it to myself now because I had anxiety.
Go for it.
I had panic attacks starting like last October or something, and I never had anything. I was a leader in the military. There's an ego kick in the ass for sure.
Oh yeah.
And I just remember sitting at work one day, my heart started racing. I started my head started spinning. I couldn't see, but I was just like, what the fuck is going on right now? And I was like, I think it's because I drank coffee. I had too much coffee.
Oh God, yeah, caffeine I can't drink caffeine. I just don't drink caffeine. Yeah.
I just started having coffee again. I have a little bit.
Wait, say coffee one more time.
Coffee, no.
I'll say wash for you. I'm gonna go wash my dishes. I'm gonna wash my dishes.
Wash.
Yeah, I'm from Missouri, so.
Oh, the Midwest. So
that's the only word people catch me on is I'm gonna go wash the dishes.
I was in Missouri for 6 months.
Where at?
Fort Leonard Wood.
Oh yeah, that's right outside of us. The church I went to as a kid, we actually got the Fort Wood soldiers.
Oh really?
Yeah.
What soldiers?
The Fort Leonard Wood soldiers. We called them Fort Wood.
Fort Wood. We called it Fort Lost in the Woods.
See that? Yeah.
And they ended up it was getting, my shit was like I had high anxiety. She said,
I
and
bet.
they put me on they put me on Zoloft, which I'm still on 50 milligrams, but I refused to take it for the longest time because I had like a similar mindset to you in that I didn't want to take medicine. I had weird things I've seen with prescription stuff, especially. And I still am on it, but I'm like, want to get off of it now because I'm like, I don't fucking need it anymore because my shit, I'm like, I changed some things. I started doing things that I wanted to do, whatever. Should probably enroll in your program to help myself elevate even more.
Well, it is. I am actually offering until the 15th. Everybody gets 74% off. Well, actually, not everybody. The first 20 students, and I'm already halfway there, get
We got 10 more spots.
74% off. So it's $99 to enroll in the program, and you have lifetime access. You also will get a one-on-one coaching session with me, which is valued at about $184, and then you get 50% off all future programs that I intend to release. So absolutely, you are welcome. Enrollment for that will close on the 15th, and then it will become full price. But that's assuming, obviously, that the spots don't fill up. I just now had announced it, really formally announced it last night. So.
Oh, great! So this is perfect timing. We had a Tony Talks exclusive that you mentioned earlier. I want to ask you one thing though.
Sure.
Have you ever? I want to ask you one thing. I want to ask you a lot of things.
You can ask me as much as you want.
Psychedelic drugs.
I have not, simply because I don't think that they would go well with my anxiety. Like I can take, you won't know what this is because you're a guy, Pamprin. It's for, lady times. And it's supposed to help with cramps and stuff, but it has a really high caffeine content, I guess, because I would freak out. If I take one of them, I freak out. I can't drink a third of a small tall Starbucks tea or anything. I don't drink coffee. I never like coffee, but I can drink a third of a Starbucks chai and crack out and think that I'm dying and have a full-blown panic attack. So I'm very, very sensitive to things, and because of my history with cocaine and prescription medication that I use not only professionally but leisurely with some prescription medication as well, I'm even more sensitive to things. So I just don't think it's ever an experience I want to have. I feel like all the drugs that I would ever want to do, I've already done. So okay. I definitely smoked a lot of pot in my day. And my last time, this is my last time story. This is, I think, the best last time smoking pot story ever. Was I was with Dan Margera and his friends, the guy from the Jackass movies, and his friends, and we were on his tour bus. His dad, by the way, broke my purse. He said my purse broke it. But we were on the tour, yeah, Phil broke my purse. And we were on the bus. I ended up spending the night at his house in Westchester, Pennsylvania. And I'm sitting there stoned as can frickin' be, going, I got sucked into the TV and I don't know how to get out because I had I'd seen, Viva La Bam and stuff. I'd seen his show a lot on TV. So I'm sitting on the couch thinking, oh my God, I got sucked into the TV and I don't know how to get out. And obviously they had higher quality weed than any of us could ever get. So I was really tripping balls on stuff, and it was freaky. And I had so many panic attacks and bad experiences on weed anyway that I figured that was a good enough last time story, and that was 2007. That was a good enough last time story, so I let it stay at that.
Shit. When I was younger, I smoked. And I thought I was like freaking out. I don't know if this probably was a panic attack. I just never clarified.
You didn't know what it was at the time, yeah.
I sat in a cold shower, like just in a bowl. And then when I got out of the shower, I was like, wow, 30 minutes must have passed or something. And it was like 40 seconds or something, like no time passed.
I've had experiences like that with different drugs that I've done or medications that I've done, that you'll be sitting there and you'll think, like, it throws off your time perception. Either you'll think it's 30 seconds, it's been 40 minutes, or likewise, you've been sitting there for a freaking hour and it seems like it was a minute. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like the distortion thing.
So no interest in DMT or anything like that?
No, a couple of my friends tried to get me to do ayahuasca, is it?
Because ayahuasca. I've done it. I've done it twice.
Yeah, a couple of my hippie woo-woo friends were saying, oh, like, it's going to be such a beautiful spiritual experience for you. And I said, if there's a God, I'd rather just wait to die to see him. I don't need to.
That's a good answer. That's as good as an answer as I've ever heard today.
Right? The thought of vomiting while like being violently sick while doing a drug that's screwing my mind up. Nothing about that sounds pleasant. But yeah, I've had several people try and get me to that. I've obviously been offered ecstasy more times than I can count through modeling and through a lot of the work I do. I've been offered ecstasy a bazillion times. But no, the only heavier drug that I ever did was cocaine. And as anybody that follows my story knows, that went wildly out of control. So, and it almost, looking back, I think that the thing that bothered me the most is, God, I became such a cliche. I was like the model with a blow problem, that became that cliche. And I always was so against being a cliche. I always wanted to be my own person, my own story, my own individual. And there I was.
Yeah, but so, it's, and I think this is, and you correct me if I'm wrong, this is an important thing for anybody to realize. No matter where you are in your story, you could still write it. However, the pages that haven't been written yet, at this point, we can all choose to write it however we want to.
I actually gave a fantastic interview about that, not to toot my own horn, but I thought it was pretty awesome, a couple of weeks ago, where I believe when you stop to think about it, and I tell my 9-year-old this all the time, when you stop to think about it, all superheroes have a tragic backstory. Like every single one of them has some kind of tragic backstory that got them to where they were. Like Bruce Wayne watched his parents get murdered. They all have this tragic backstory. Spider-Man, his uncle got killed, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of superheroes, most superheroes have the super tragic backstory. But at one point, they decided, I'm not going to let this drag me down. Because think about it, Bruce Wayne could have been the orphan kid that ended up on drugs somewhere, but he didn't let that define his life. And even if he had for X amount of time, there's no reason that you can't come out of that. Like, I was a drug addict. I almost killed myself. I just had this all-consuming depression until I decided this isn't the story I want to live anymore. And I'm all about using that backstory to become your own superhero. So maybe you woke up this morning and you're sitting there being hard on yourself on your past, be it yesterday or be it 5 years ago. I know, because I used to do that all the time. There's never any reason that you can't rewrite your story. As you said, there's never a reason that you can't decide to either start a new chapter or hell, even a new book entirely. I have told people before that the song Jumper by Third Eye Blind, I wish you could step back from that ledge, my friend. You could cut ties with all the lies you've been living in. If at any moment you don't like your life, you can literally scrap everything, quit your job, stop talking to everyone you talk to. You can literally just cut ties with everything that's not serving you. You can at any moment decide you don't want to be any part of any of that and start over and start another life. And I highly recommend just doing that or I highly recommend against just doing that on a whim. But, everybody knows what they need. And sometimes it does take scrapping your life. I know in my situation, I had to scrap a good chunk of my life. I had to let go of people that I cared about a lot. I had to let go of habits. I had to start changing habits. I had to change the entire way that I lived, that I ate, that I thought. I had to change pretty much everything about myself because I knew if I didn't, this was the driving factor for me. I knew if I didn't, I would just end up on another ledge. And maybe that song wouldn't be playing that time. Maybe it's like Spider-Man where everybody gets one and I got my one and that song wouldn't be playing the next time to pull me down. I knew that if I kept going down that road, where it was going to end up. I knew that if I didn't make the healthy decisions that I knew I needed to make. Deep down inside, we're smart people. We know what we need. We know, what's healthy for us. And it came to the point where I saw the road ahead of me and I said, I can either go down the same road and end up on another ledge, or I can try a different road. And I tried the different road and I like the scenery here.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it because, and a lot of things, you might be able to put things to be dormant in your head until it explodes and becomes you have anxiety and then you have depression all of a sudden. You never had it because it could come out of nowhere. And that's kind of
literally the story of my life. Was pretty much I shoved it all in a box. And then one day the box just goes and blows open and I'm like,
that's kind of what I was going to say, is that's kind of what happened to me.
I have no idea what I'm doing here.
Wow. And I wanted to mention when you You still model, and that's at one point you would go earn a Playboy shoot.
I did shoot for Playboy several times actually, which was kind of what this was one of those things we were talking about earlier.
I shot for Playgirl,
Where
actually.
did you really?
No, I'm just kidding.
It's like I've never met a guy that shot the Playboy girl. That'd be exciting. But that was one of those things that I was saying earlier. Everybody told me I couldn't. I was always told I was very ostracized growing up. I was never accepted. I was the outcast, losery kid that nobody wanted anything to do with. I only had a couple of friends, and we're still friends to this day. So I'm very grateful for those friends. But I was very ostracized. Always told I wasn't good enough. My boobs weren't big enough. I didn't have the right clothes. Whatever the case was, always told I wasn't good enough. Well, I kind of decided, it was actually probably a year and a half after my mom died, I decided I want to shoot for Playboy. And it was kind of it was my first real big step after my mom died of going towards something I wanted to go toward. So, I mean, it was empowering in that way. But there were two other reasons it was super empowering, because it was my giant middle finger to everybody that told me I couldn't. And I had started doing nude modeling a couple years before that, simply because I was sexually assaulted when I was 16. And in many ways, I felt like he kept my power. Like, he kept power over my body. I was ashamed of who I was. I was ashamed of my body. I felt dirty all the time. And the first time I did a nude shoot, and when I say nude shoot, keep in mind that this is like art nudes. This isn't, here's my legs spread and hello everyone, here's my vagina. Like, but if that's what you do, then that's what you do, and that's your story, and kudos to you. But that just wasn't what I wanted to do. But it was very much my taking my power back from that person. It was the beginning of me taking my power back from that person who had violated me and made me feel bad about myself.
Beautiful, and that's the perfect way to do it. I don't know. Well, I don't know what the perfect way to do it is, but it sounds like it reminded me of Ronda Rousey. I don't know if you heard. She had a story where somebody released. You know what that is? The UFC. She was a UFC fighter.
Oh, yes.
She somebody blackmailed her with naked pictures they took of her, and said she did a shoot for ESPN the magazine, and she said, "I want things to be released on my terms," and it was her way of kind of removing that cloud over her head.
Yeah, there shouldn't be a stigma. I don't understand our society's viewpoint on nudity, because for me, nudity is not sexual. Like, I don't sexualize a naked body the minute I see it. To me, all through history, there's been beautiful art of nude forms and stuff. So I don't think that nudity is by default sexual. And while sometimes, yes, I was, in lingerie, or I was like for Playboy in quote unquote sexy poses, which I don't even know what that means, like bedroom eyes, I guess. But
Every pose I make is a sexy pose.
here's my blue steel.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, for me, it was always a very empowering thing, and I've never really cared much what other people thought of me. So I know I got a lot of flack for shooting nude. I did get a lot of judgment for that, but I really didn't care. I said,
It's what's and I'm sorry, but this is just like spinning in my head right now. A lot of the things that we look at as different or weird or crazy, even like whether it's mental health or just something that doesn't conform with somebody's background to how they grew up, it becomes ostracized if it's not part of that like majority mindset.
Yeah,
but
and that's really sad.
exactly, and I think what would be healthy for society is, and that goes back to respect. Just respecting people for what they want to do or whatever, and if
Well,
you
the
don't like
ironic,
it.
the ironic thing about it is everybody always assumed that because I chose to shoot nude that I am a hypersexualized person, that I, slept around, or I'm one of those people that sex is an extremely valuable thing to me. Like, sex is a very special thing. I've never been the one night stand type. I've never had sex outside of a committed relationship. As a matter of fact, I had to end a relationship with someone that otherwise was going great. Like, we got along, we really connected, but we had went on, I don't know, probably 12, 13 dates. We went on quite a few dates, and I didn't sleep with him. And he had sent me this message saying, well, are we going to have sex soon, because I can't keep waiting, which I'm just sitting there going, oh my God.
It's not the best way to go about it.
It's really not the best way to go about it, but okay. And I just said, look, I'm really sorry. I really like you, but I don't have sex outside of committed relationships with people, that I have a trusting factor. And I kid you not, and I did get past because this guy is a really good friend of mine, and we did become really good friends. But he told me, well, I just need to test drive before I buy. And I'm so glad that this was over text message, because I literally responded, I'm not a freaking car. And we never slept together. But everybody assumes that because I feel good about my body, I feel okay with sharing my body, I think that nudity is beautiful and artistic. Everybody thinks I'm like hypersexualized. I'm absolutely not. Like I lost this relationship because I wasn't willing to put out, quote unquote, as it's called. And I actually had an incident one time too where I went to a nudist colony with a guy friend who right afterwards, I guess, assumed that I was going to sleep with him. And he started to come up to me and I go, what are you doing? Because we were really good friends. I go, what are you doing? And he said, well, we just spent the day naked together. I said, around a bunch of 60-year-old naked men with their wrinkly wieners hanging out. I'm not turned on right now, dude.
That's a good way to unsexualize nudity. That and going to a sauna at the gym and just.
Oh god, yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it for you.
Okay, so we could start to wind things down, if you can.
But now I'm pumped. We're just getting started.
Yeah, we're just getting started. We can keep going. We could talk about where do you go from nudity?
Right. So I think that's a good place to stop. I think we hit our peak for today.
So what's your social media, your plan to help the process that you had? I'm messing it up. I'm sorry.
That is okay. So my course that I was talking about, Happiness Boost, you can check it out on my website, amandawebsterhealth.com, where you can also see other podcasts and stuff I've been on. And you can download a free PDF of the top 10 nutrients that affect mental health, because a lot of people don't realize how that connection between mental and physical health. And it will also give you the sources of where you can find those. You can also find me on Instagram, Amanda Webster Health. And like we were talking about earlier, I just launched a YouTube channel where I offer different advice and insights on mental health. And I've also been interviewing celebrities on mental and physical health issues. So if you want to catch that Billy Bob Thornton interview, youtube.com/Amanda Webster Health.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming. This was fantastic.
Good, thank you.
I got a lot out of it. I'm sure the listeners will get more out of it.
I hope that everyone understands that our positions in the beginning were just that. They're just our positions. We're all doing the best we can, to manage what's going on, and to really, I just want to move forward in a positive direction as a society and as an individual.
Beautiful. Let's stay positive, everybody.
Yep.
Treat each other with respect.